Best Irish music on irishradio.org with Jerry Byrne.
Now, as regards performers, singers, musicians, and all of that, what is the position as regards, let's say, a band, musicians coming from Ireland to perform in the UK and vice versa? Because there were alarm bells being rang by musicians in the UK prior to Brexit as regards them having difficulty performing in Europe. So what is the situation with this?
Yeah, so you're absolutely right, and it's an issue that comes up. It was in the news there again earlier this week. Especially as the economy is reopening, this is kind of in people's minds. But I suppose, luckily, between Ireland and the United Kingdom, we have the common travel area. So musicians and their technical crews who are UK citizens or Irish citizens, they do not need a visa or they don't need any other work permits in order to operate or perform in Ireland or the UK. So that's really positive. So we've actually been in touch with the music rep organisation here. It's called UK Music, to make that point clear that, look, musicians based in the United Kingdom can still perform in Ireland and vice versa. And there's absolutely no visa restriction. Obviously, there are visa restrictions for UK musicians going to other countries in the EU, but not Ireland. So once that is, I suppose that's one aspect. But there is also, again, like as we spoke about with moving goods, there are certain documentary requirements. If you are a musician or a touring company and you're moving equipment or musical instruments, and this is because the United Kingdom is no longer in the single market or the customs union, so there will be certain documentary requirements that will apply. So say, for instance, if you're a touring company and you're bringing in lots of really huge rigs and lighting equipment, you may need a document called an ATA carnet. And so it's a document that lists all the goods that are to be temporarily imported or exported into Ireland, or say from Ireland into England. So those are generally used by the really big touring companies, and they're valid for a year. But say for smaller musicians, small bands and things like that, if they're coming to Ireland to play a gig, or they're coming to the UK to play a gig and they're bringing, drum kits and things like that, they can make an import declaration. And what essentially you're saying in that declaration is that you're bringing these goods into the United Kingdom or into Ireland on a temporary basis. So they're not staying in the UK to be sold or going into Ireland to be sold. And when you make that import declaration, you have to pay security as well for the duration of the stay of the items. But that is refunded when you leave again and you take your items with you again. But again, I suppose that refers to, where you have a number of pieces of equipment. But say, for instance, if you have someone that's travelling with a portable musical instrument, so let's say a whistle or fiddle, and you can carry that on your person, you can make an oral declaration once you're crossing the border, but there's no paperwork and there's no security required on that. So you can just, when you're going through, just say, well, I have my violin or whatever with you. So there are, I suppose, different requirements just in terms of moving goods. And again, I would just point people through to the revenue website in Ireland or HMRC here, but certainly there's no restriction in terms of going there and playing gigs and different performers.
Okay, well, if it were a situation where you've got a band and you've got 5 or 8 guys coming over, and they're coming over in a van, and they've got drums, guitars, etc., and they've got a PA system. They'll be able to do this temporary import with all of the items listed on this temporary import thing. They pay the money for that, and then they get the money back when they're leaving the UK.
Exactly. Or else, if they're going back and forward quite regularly, so say if they're doing a number of gigs in the UK, it may be better for them to have an ATA carnet, the first document I referred to, because that's valid for a year. So it would list all the instruments, so it's almost like a pre-approval form. But it depends on your circumstances. So definitely I would say, get in touch with HMRC here or Revenue, and they will be able to tell you what works best for you. So it may be the case that an import declaration is the most straightforward and simplest way of facilitating, say that example that you provided there.
Right. Now, what is the cost of actually getting that particular document that lasts for a year?
It would depend. It would depend, I suppose, say on what the equipment is, how much equipment is. I wouldn't really be able to give a figure. Again, I would say, to contact Revenue or HMRC, because it would really depend on the particulars, I suppose, of what was being shipped and the value of the goods being shipped.